from my sister!
Welcome back to the Happy Horror Podcast, where we review horror movies and horror franchises. I'm Mark.
And I'm Deadeye.
And today we're reviewing Five Nights at Freddy's, released in 2023, directed by Emma Tammy, who co-wrote the screenplay with Scott Cawthon and Seth Cudpack. Deadeye, can you give the people the plot summary?
Struggling to take care of his 10-year-old sister Abby on his own, the generally undependable Mike is low on options when he lands this new job to pay the bills, and brings her along to the gig. Mike quickly realizes, however, that the night shift at Freddy's won't be as kickback as he was thinking after he makes a disturbing discovery, that the pizza place's 4 horrifying animatronic mascots all apparently come alive, moving about on their own as they hunt down and attempt to kill anyone that is still at Freddy's after midnight.
So, everyone, Deadeye's back. Now, this is his first time back since we reviewed Detention together, and we're back again to review another horror movie based off a horror video game. So glad to have you back with us, Deadeye.
Appreciate it very much. Yeah, and there's quite a lot of horror games. This one's kind of trying to cover, so should be an interesting one.
It does. And over on his YouTube channel, which is also called Deadeye.
Deadeye, yeah.
Yes, I joined him as he streamed a few of the Five Nights at Freddy games, and it helped me understand the lore a little bit more, because honestly, besides knowing like what Five Nights at Freddy is because of pop culture, and at the time of the game's release, I was definitely around and alive and knew what the hell was going on, but I never really played them. So when the movie came out and I decided I wanted to review it, I was like, I should probably play a game or two, or at least watch someone play the game, and that's where Deadeye came into the rescue. And the games are fun and interesting. And it's kind of, I don't know, for me, it was weird, being with you doing the streams, because the things that I was seeing from the movies, they weren't in that first game. And then you kept on saying, this character comes in at this time, or this part of the lore comes in this game. I'm just like, so the movie just kind of just merged lore from 4 to 5 different games and just threw it out there. So that was interesting for me.
Yeah, it grabs a lot of lore, and then it also, it changes it some to make it more convenient for a movie. There's a lot of stuff. There's the lore. You have the games themselves, which give you kind of a loose bit of lore here and there, and then you have what people have kind of broken apart through the games, through little bits and pieces here and there, signs or pieces of paper on a wall or whatever, to get a much more fleshed out story. The movie couldn't have possibly covered all that there is without making a lot of changes to it. So yeah, but it is nice to kind of get some background on it from the game as well, one set of games.
Had you played the games prior to the movie coming out, prior to you streaming it on your YouTube channel?
Only bits and pieces. I think back in middle school, even I believe some of them were out. Maybe the first game had come out around that time, and so I played the first one a little bit. I never played the third. Maybe the first and second, little bits and pieces here and there. But until I showed it on my stream, yeah, I wasn't. I hadn't played all of them. Just watched. I saw some stuff. It's in the media for sure, like you mentioned earlier. But and then there's been lore videos. I watched some of when I was younger, because there's just such an obsession with the games online.
Yeah, that's a lot of my research was coming from. I was just watching lore videos and trying to get an understanding, because I was reading stuff about the games and then being with you for the streams. And I'm just okay, what I'm seeing is not what the movie was telling me. So I need to know where this movie stuff comes from. And those lore videos definitely helped a lot.
Yeah, they flesh it out quite a bit. There's so much. There's so much.
I know, and I feel like there's so much that they left out that they can definitely have at least one more movie, which I think might be in the cards. So but for me going into this movie, I don't know. I was kind of excited, even though I hadn't played the games, because I enjoyed the concept Like I was never a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, but I enjoy the concept of like this this what are they referred to as the
Animatronics, yeah.
not the animatronics but like the place like
Oh yeah,
the
family diners, or well, it's really like Chuck E. Cheese esque, but
yeah.
turned into horror for sure.
Yeah, because I hate it. I don't like Chuck E. Cheese, and I didn't like Haunted Trails or any of those like family animatronic places. Like my parents, my mom took me to like Chuck E. Cheese on several birthdays, and you can find photos of me looking very upset and just like not amused. Like, why are we here with this giant ass rat person eating this bad pizza? So like, I always had like a weird feeling about those kind of places. So like the concept of the movie and the video games always like appealed to me.
Mm.
And then I had watched the Nicolas Cage movie Willy's Wonderland, and I was like, okay, this is basically a Five Nights at
Oh,
Freddy movie.
sure.
So now we're getting an actual like movie based off the IP, like legitimate. So it should be great. So I went to this movie like really looking forward to it. And then having Josh Hutcherson in it
Oh yeah, for
just
sure.
made me want to watch it even more.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think they did a good job with a lot of the movie. I'm always a little hesitant. I feel like the one with Nick Cage in it was kind of felt low budget. It felt kind of cheap, even though Nick Cage is in it. He's in a lot of movies that are kind of like that, where he's the star actor and everything else is just there to be around him, or to be like a gimmick for him to use. But yeah, this one, I think the designs for the animatronics were really pretty cool. They definitely spent some money on the diner and everything to try to make it closer to the IP and give fans of that more to work with. So there's a few things though from the games or just from kind of paying attention, rewatching through the movie that I felt like I didn't notice on a first watch. But I think maybe before
Oh,
getting into some of that stuff, do we kind of talk about some of the kills maybe to start with? Because I feel like
yeah. Let's talk about some of the kills. I feel like
mhm,
I sorry, we can talk about the kills and the scenes together. Some of the standout scenes because I feel like that opening scene slash kill
mhm.
kind of gave me a false hope and a false excitement for the movie.
I could
Because
see that. Yeah.
it opens with that security guard being killed, and it's like it's intense, adrenaline's pumping, you're
Hmm.
kind of scared, you're kind of on high, and then that's it. And then we don't get that for like a long while.
Right. Yeah. There's a pretty big delay there. I mean, a lot of horror movies, you don't really get into the horror too much, until you get a bit into the movie. But that beginning was, and especially the way, like the mask with all the blades on it and everything like that, like in a maybe a more R-rated type of movie, that could be a pretty brutal scene to show. And so like that was such a cool kind of start, but I don't really feel like until well into the movie later on that we get anything even close to the brutality of what that like makes you like primes you for like, okay, this is maybe kind of going to be pretty
Yeah,
cool.
but even with that, I
Yeah.
like to compare it to like that first Halloween from the
Mm.
70s. Like
Hmm.
it starts with like 5-year-old Michael Myers or however old he was, killing
Hmm.
his sister. And then, it goes from that. And yes, the brutality and the killing is like slowed down. And we don't really get that for probably 40 minutes afterwards. But in between that time, they're still building up the intensity of the scare. You have a character there who is running around town saying he's on the loose.
Mm.
No one's safe. He's going to kill you all. And you have another character who's being stalked. So you still have that like
Mm.
fear there. And I feel like that's what the movie was missing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
Like
good point. Yeah, something to
that
keep your
fear
tension.
didn't linger. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like I totally actually I agree. Yeah, that's interesting because I remember I think right after that early scenes we get some shots that are, they're good for setting up tension, but it doesn't feel like the scenes have anything really that scary. Like I feel like early on after that you have Josh Hutcherson, you have, I guess, Mike is the character's name. You have him as a security guard. He beats up the guy that he thinks is going to abduct a kid, things like that. But you don't really have any reason to care that much at this point. You don't really know this character. From there, talking to the guy that kind of is a semi stand-in for Phone Guy, or you could say more of a major villain later on. But at this time, it's just some guy. So it does feel like there's this big drop off. If you've already seen the movie, looking back on it, maybe you have a little bit more intensity because you know some of the stakes here. Like, why is he acting so ridiculous? But even like, I think especially what stood out to me in maybe a negative way on first watch, and really just kept on. Every time I watched it, I was kind of like, okay, he chases down this guy and beats him up and everything like that. It reminded me so much of like Paul Blart Mall Cop or something. It just seems goofy. Like, I don't know why he's chasing this guy. I don't know why he's tackling him. It just sounded like it
just felt off.
Yeah, it doesn't quite hit. So yeah, the early part of the movie, yeah, because until you start getting into 5 minutes, and that's another thing that the movie has to contend with is like, if we're not in the if we're not in the set where everything, they've spent all the money, they spent all the time, and they've spent all the care getting these animatronics together and everything, that's great. But if we're out and about, like, I don't care about the mall. I don't care about him and his sister. I don't know why to care yet. So that was I would say
didn't care about the dreams he was having, and it's like,
oh sure. Mm-hmm.
I feel like every 20 minutes or so, the tone of the movie shifts for me. Mm-hmm. Like the tone kept switching. I'm like, okay, it's this hard knock life family drama.
Sure.
And then you have the stuff with the woods that gives him PTSD. Mm-hmm. And then you have the intensity at Five Nights at Freddy's. Mm-hmm. And then you have the awkward like love story with the girl, and it's just like, the movie has so many different tones. You could like go in one direction, and it really wasn't doing it for me.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I feel like that is really the downside. Because overall, I liked the movie quite a bit. I think as like a spin-off to a game type of thing, it felt like they spent some extra money, some extra time, and the acting was solid. But those things were a downside. The pacing or the tone of it early on, especially, was pretty rough. I do feel like on second watch, there were a couple things that I noticed that I thought were pretty interesting. During the parts where things are just kind of not that compelling, I'm trying to find something to be interested in. With the guy that's the career counselor, I think, what's his name in there? I wrote it down here. So there's the guy that's the career counselor, and his name is something completely unimportant. It's totally not involved in the games or anything like that, but he ends up being the final kind of evil, which should be William Afton. In the games, that's William Afton. He made the animatronics, along with another character that's not in the movie at all. Henry Emily, I think.
He has two names. When he's pretending to be the career counselor, he's Steve Raglan, but then he's also actually William.
Okay, so they do bring that around. I thought they must. When I rewatched it again, I noticed his name is Steve Raglan on the tag, and I'm like, okay, it's kind of a random name. In the lore, Mike, our character, who is definitely Mike Schmidt, because he even says he's like Mike Schmidt, and then he stops himself. But that's the character from the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, and it's sort of a callback to that. Mike Schmidt. Schmidt is supposed to be like an alias or like a fake name as well, like Raglan is, or Steve Raglan or whatever. It's supposed to be a fake name. His real name is Michael Afton, and he's supposed to be the son of that character in the games. But clearly in the movie, that's being kind of scrapped. This is one of the big changes in my mind, where Michael.
I missed that from the games.
You don't really notice it in the games without like some lore diving. But Michael, well, in the games, he's supposed to be trying to like destroy the Five Nights at Freddy stuff, because a lot of bad stuff happens there. The murders and all that stuff is involved. I won't get overly into the game lore, but that's one aspect of it where we're playing as a character that knows that these animatronics are here. We've got the guy on the phone. The phone guy, I don't think that's supposed to be William Afton, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, William is in this one. He reads the name Mike Schmidt, and then he stops himself, and then his tone shifts. And I don't really notice it too heavy when I watch the movie first, but on rewatch, I'm like, okay, he says Mike Schmidt, and then he stops himself, kind of clears his throat, and is like, actually, I do have a job for you. When I first saw that, I was like, this is kind of weird, because if this is supposed to be, like, how would you know who Mike Schmidt is? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Because Mike Schmidt in this universe, in this movie, he's not his son. That wouldn't make any sense. He'd recognize him immediately, right? So who is this guy? Why is he stopping and he's reconsidering, okay, maybe I do have a job for you? And then the reason, I think, is because he killed his younger brother. So he might have talked to Garrett Schmidt, right? He might have heard his last name before killing him at some point, and now he's like, oh, 2 for 1, right? I got to get this guy. He's like, and the way he acts after that throughout the like throughout trying to sell Mike Schmidt on that he should work at Five Nights at Freddy's at the restaurant is like, yeah, well, you don't have to do it, but it's a job and you could make it happen, whatever. And the whole time he's kind of going into this salesman kind of pitch, where earlier in the conversation he's like, you kind of suck. I don't know where in the world you would work. You don't accept anybody. You're kind of just not fit for anything. All of a sudden he's like kind of trying to really sell. And that shift happens when he sees his name. And I thought that was super interesting because there's no real reason to notice. But once you notice, it's weird the way that he acts after that point. Or weird but good. It makes sense. Like a snake or something, right? So that's a little bit of something that I doubt many people would have noticed. I didn't notice it the first couple times. And then once I thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. Outside of that, there's only one other... Okay, there's another thing, too. I thought that was interesting. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting, when we talk about, like, characters, noticing something on second watch, because now you know this character is going to do this or that thing. Overall, I really don't like the babysitter character. I don't really feel like it fits. It's just super weird on first viewing and on future viewings, because the babysitter... Seemingly, this is like Max, I think is her name, is Mike's friend. There's almost this inclination of like maybe love interest there because she's looking at rings on the TV and kind of says something to Mike. Like she says something like, I wish someone would buy me a ring. What do you think, Mike? And he doesn't respond to that. But there's sort of like a feeling like these guys should know each other pretty well. And she's babysitting him for free. And then later on, she, I think, betrays him to the mother or whatever who's planning on getting him killed or at least like fired from a job. That whole thing felt super weird. And her character just felt really out of place. Like, why don't I know who this character is? Why do I never really get introduced very well to this character? But then after a time, I came around to it after rewatching it most recently because I think they do try to set her up to be like a traitor almost. I didn't notice it on the first couple of watches, and I still don't really like her character overall because I think it's kind of bland. It wasn't really explored very well. But when she's looking at those rings, she's looking at the rings. We have a picture, like a shot of her sitting there looking at the rings. Then we have a shot of the rings, and they're like super expensive, whatever. And it's saying on the TV, like, they're so perfect. You need one of these rings. It'll really help in whatever way. And then we have a shot back to her. And so I'm looking at her. I'm looking at the rings. I'm like, okay, I don't really care about this character. Then I'm like, why am I being shown rings right now? What is the point of this? Is it just to like have her flirt with Mike? And then we get a shot back to her. She's already wearing like several rings, like 4 or 5 rings on her fingers. And I'm like, okay, she's obsessing over materialistic stuff. And she's like, you can just see her like eyes like gunning down to the TV as she wants these rings. She already has a bunch of rings. It sort of sets her up as like maybe a greedy type of character, which allows a bit more later on for when she betrays Mike, for that to make sense. Still don't love the character because like there's not really any payoff to that. I didn't know her before and I still don't really know her. But at least it was something to try to make something out of her character. And not just, like it uses up some of the time. It's
I felt like, now that you mention it, I felt like like maybe Mike had given her those other rings as payment. But I feel like, that whole character and all those scenes with her made no sense. It was just like, why is she here? Why is this side plot here? And everything with the aunt was also just like, like, is this really necessary? Like, it just felt...
She's like cartoonishly evil. I think like that kind of sucked. Yeah.
It felt like they thought they really needed to flesh out a story outside of Fassbender, but it's like, no, we're here to watch him be at Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria. Like, this is what we want to see. This is what Five Nights at Freddy's is. I mean, other than that one game where they were like stalking the kid in the bedroom, they all mostly took place at Fazbear. So like we didn't need some other story. And then since we're still talking about scenes, all the scenes in the woods and the dream sequences, like I did not care. And I was trying to figure out how the hell, like I just kept trying to understand why this was important. How this connect to to the animatronics.
Hmm.
And then when you learn that the place where his brother was kidnapped isn't the same city or state where Fazbear is located, it still wasn't making any sense for me. It never really connected. I know
It
that
is.
at the end, and in the end, we found out we learned that Aspen is the one who kidnaps Mike's
Mm.
younger brother. But it's like, was he just like some roaming child serial killer, and then he just so happens to establish Fazbear because he thought, oh well, this is more convenient if I just like kill kids who come here than roam
Mm.
around the country looking for random kids to kidnap and murder. Like it just they didn't connect it completely for me. It just all just felt like they took a different script and was like, okay, we're gonna just use this for Five Nights at Freddy's and just like throw the whole like Fazbear plot in there at some point. That's what it started to feel like at some point for me. I don't know
I
about
can
anybody
see
else.
that. Yeah. Well, so I didn't really think about that maybe because I didn't really think about the locations of everything as much, but I know in the games there were multiple FNAF locations. I don't know if the movie ever indicated that there even would be or if it was all just one. I don't know if they really say or not. So in my mind, I'm already kind of assuming there's somewhere nearby that he took Garrett to, but it might have been that he's supposed to have driven all the way out there because they do act like it's pretty far away. I don't remember exactly where it's all taking place at, but I think it's like Omaha or something like that. Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I'm not sure. Somewhere out there where he's where this happened. It's meant to be further away, which is interesting. I also don't like with the daughter thinking back, and this could just be me misremembering, but I don't. No, maybe I'd have to watch it again. I don't remember. There wasn't a daughter. There was just him and his brother initially, and then Garrett gets taken away, and then there's the daughter. Are his parents dead? Is that the idea?
I think his parents are dead because
Okay.
it doesn't explain either they're dead or
Hmm.
it does it's not explained. But obviously, his parents through
Hmm.
their grief of losing their younger son,
Hmm.
they had a daughter, but it's not
Hmm.
explained like how long after Abby was
Hmm.
born or
Hmm.
what happened to their parents afterwards. Like
Hmm.
how long has it just been Mike and Abby? Like none of that is explained.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe there's some offline or something there where it says that they're dead or that they're in grief or I don't know. I know like he ended up taking care of his younger sister, and then in him taking care of her, there's a lot of these things about her seeing things that aren't there. I was trying to kind of figure out from her drawings or anything if there's any indication that she was seeing the animatronics or like those kids before she went to FNAF, or if she only really starts seeing them then. Because there's some scenes early on before she even goes to the pizzeria where she's seeing things, and she even says to her brother, she's like, "You're sitting on my friend," and he's like kind of exasperated and gets up. So she clearly is seeing things, but maybe she just has an overactive imagination, and that's what lets her see the animatronics. That's my
Okay, but see,
assumption. But
I was
yeah.
thinking I
Hmm.
because with his dreams, sometimes it felt like his dreams were like visions or like premonitions.
Hmm.
And then with her, like also seeing things, I was getting like a weird supernatural element there,
Mm.
and that's why I said earlier that like the tone of the movie and like what the movie was telling me was kind of like different. Like I kept like it all felt different. It's like, is this about some child
Hmm.
killer at a pizzeria? Is this about someone kidnapping
Mm.
kids out the woods? Is it some hard knock life drama? Like, do
Mm.
they have supernatural powers? Like, are the ghost kids talking to them? And if
Mm.
that's the case, it's like I
Mm.
don't know. I just wasn't understanding. It was starting to get confusing for me, and the more we like dive into that, the more confusing it gets.
Yeah, there could have been. Maybe there were just too many pieces. I think especially with the ant or whatever, that was a lot because I feel like when it comes to the dreams, we're kind of set up for him to be trying to explore dreams and trying to get back to this place where this stuff happens. I feel okay about a lot of that he's been having this dream over and over again. Then when he goes there, that the animatronics or like the souls of the kids or whatever, that stuff is involved in him seeing more, maybe. Especially
I
with
would have
Jared having been
been,
killed. Yeah.
I would have been more okay with it if it turned out that one of the animatronics was his brother.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah,
And
exactly.
that and that would have made sense to
Mhm.
why Abby was connected to them, because unbeknownst to her, her big brother that she never met was reaching out to her
Yeah.
and kind
Yeah,
of
that would make
connecting. Like
sense.
that would have all made it so much better. Like, oh, actually one of these animatronics is our brother, and that's why they bonded with Abby, because he's being protective of his little sister. Like it, I don't know. It's like the dots could have been connected better.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like
yeah, I think.
the stories are right there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there were some points when I first watched the movie. I feel like things like that, a little bit up and down, not the worst. The selling point for the movie would definitely be the animatronics and like the sets and everything. That was pretty well designed. Some of the ideas in it are cool, but yeah, there's some parts that are kind of all over the place. I could have done without, especially the ant, because I think the dream sequences are kind of necessary. Without those, you have to find a whole something else. Like I think that helps. You tie the kids in as being like the animatronics, and then we're kind of humanizing them in this maybe good way. Make you think of them as being like kids, because that's really what they're supposed to be. That feels okay. Could have been tied in better, but I feel like that's kind of necessary. The ant feels a lot less necessary because I don't know if I need the ant that much. Maybe she's fine to get the criminals in there, though, because I think the death scenes there are super important. Without that, how many death scenes can you even have? You need to have some throwaway characters to have the animatronics, like, to show the real danger these things pose. That feels okay, because some of the criminal deaths, when they break in, that is maybe one of the highlights. It's silly, but I think there's a part where one of them gets, like, bitten in half or something. That was pretty cool. That brings up some of those scenes, like helps make that worthwhile.
Yeah, that definitely does add to it, because I was when you watch horror movies, like you want the death scenes, you want, even if they're
Mhm,
not particularly gory, like you watch horror movies for those kills. That's like a
mhm,
part of the joy of horror movies. And again, it felt like it dragged out so long after that initial opening kill. So when we get to the criminals, it all makes
mhm,
sense. But I don't think we needed the ant to get the criminals there. They could have just been, honestly, they could, since they were modernized. Well, actually, because I don't,
mhm,
are we ever, I don't, I think this movie is set in the early 2000s,
mhm.
if I'm thinking of the timeline correctly, because it
Mhm,
says that his brother was kidnapped in 1980,
mhm.
and he was a kid then, and now he's what, like he's like in his late 20s, early
Yeah,
30s. So
that makes sense.
this movie is set in early 2000s. So I was gonna say it could have
Mhm,
been that instead of criminals, they could have been just like some YouTubers
mhm,
exploring, but that would have been too early for that.
mhm.
But
Oh yeah.
or they could have just been criminals, or just people who are just breaking in to like
Mm,
crash at a Fazbear, or to just like
mhm,
do stupid stuff. Like they could have got those people there, those characters there,
mm.
without needing the aunt to send them there.
True. Yeah, I did kind of like there's that lawyer guy that she's always kind of hauling around with her, who's just so doesn't want to be there all the time. I kind of like that character. It's a bit of a
I liked
throwaway,
him.
but it was funny.
He
Um,
was funny. That whole, I was like, oh, he does not want to be there. He just wants to get paid so he can never see the woman ever again.
mhm. Yeah, he did a good
But
job, I
like,
think, acting in those scenes where he's just so like blank face, like please let
and
me
just
leave.
done. But
Yeah.
even the aunt also brings up more questions about like, okay,
Mm,
if you're gonna have it tell us that Mike's taking care of his sister, and he's so
mhm,
overprotective because he lost his brother,
mm,
and you have this aunt who wants the sister because she wants that paycheck from the government that you
mhm.
get when you're taking care of kids,
Sure.
but you don't tell us why they're in this situation.
Mm,
Like I
mm,
want to know that now that you introduced all this,
mhm,
I now want to know what happened to Mike and Abby's parents that Mike is
Yeah.
taking care of his sister. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
because
It brings
like
in some
I
complexity.
get it. They lost a son. That comes with emotional and mental breakdowns, but
Mm-hmm.
they had it together enough to concede Abby.
Yeah.
So like I need a timeline. So did having Abby eventually break them? Did something else happen to break them? Like why are we at the point where Mike has to take this dangerous job to support his sister? And you have and the Aunt Powder, is this his mom's sister, his dad's sister? Like
Mm.
what's going on here? It just having that
Yeah.
character there opens the movie up to more questions, and
Mhm.
we don't get answers to them.
Yeah, it's sort of weird. Like it makes the movie feel a bit rushed, even though I don't feel like most of it was super rushed. It's just like they had enough time. I feel like to make it a bit more human or to humanize the characters a bit because they it without knowing the backstories, without knowing the reasons, it's just sort of like it's harder to care about the characters. You're just sort of waiting for the animatronics to come back on screen a little bit, which is okay. I mean, you might be anyway, but just a little bit more there would have been better. Um, and so like as like after having played the games and looked at the lore and whatever, there was also Vanessa. Vanessa shows up, and that character. So from the games, there's this whole slew of characters. I think they almost threw in Vanessa as being a character to get people who are interested in the games to wonder what's going to happen. Like I bet they had like a cast list or something beforehand where everyone's like, "Who's Vanessa? Why is Vanessa in this game? How does that play in?" Because in the games, Vanessa is a security guard that I think gets somehow possessed by William Afton's soul or something. The games get really convoluted after you go through the first like 5 games or so. We start to get to Security Breach and Ultimate Custom Night or whatever. There's like these variety of games after where there's a lot of weird stuff with souls and things like that. But so Vanessa's character comes in way later and has her own strange story. In this movie, Vanessa plays as William's daughter. William's daughter's name is, originally is Elizabeth. So William had 3 kids. There was Michael Afton, who is the main sort of security guy later on. There was, I think, William Jr., who is a kid that ends up getting killed. And then there's Elizabeth, who also gets killed by an animatronic, which is called Baby, and Baby actually shows up weirdly. There's a lot of like little bits and pieces of lore or important parts of lore that don't really fit together that get pulled into the movie and then changed dramatically. So Elizabeth is the machine I think it's in the storage wherever where Vanessa, the security guard, and Mike, or I guess Vanessa the cop in this case, and Mike, the security guard, go back into this into the storage room within the movie, and there's this doll sitting there with its chest open and these spring locks on it, and Vanessa takes a broom and stabs it into the center, and the spring locks they jerk in and like crush the end of the broom. That thing on the ground, that broken apart machine, is Baby, and Baby is the machine that's originally supposed to have eaten Elizabeth, who Vanessa basically is Elizabeth in this game. It's kind of a mess there with lore. So watching a lot of that happen, I was like, okay, what's going on? How does this fit in? Where are they trying to pull this stuff in from the games? It is interesting though. I'm glad that they kept a lot of things from the games, but it doesn't really fit super well, to be honest. But Baby is a cool design. But they used like a really broken apart version of Baby in the movies. Baby was in Sister Location, which I think we were on stream a little bit playing or taking a look at Sister Location, which it's Baby's the one that has like this, a baby like voice and talks to you throughout Sister Location, where the one where you're crawling through the vents and you have to hide under a cabinet or something like that, close a door, and then she chats to you like telling you bits of lore or whatever. That character is a super cool character. It's supposed to be Elizabeth's soul in that character, and then we're just left with this empty hunk in the movie. Feels a little bit like a letdown. Like don't even have the character in, and then to have Vanessa switch into being Michael or William Afton's daughter. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess. I kind of like that she's there, but I wish they would have named her Elizabeth. It would have just made more sense. Why make the change?
I
I don't know.
think they made the change to throw off
Mm,
fans of the game. Because if
hmm
you merely walk in and say, "Oh, I'm Elizabeth," then
hmm Oh,
all
you
the
know
fans of
already.
the game will be like, "Oh, okay, now we know who she is."
Yeah, okay, that's fair, and that's true. I
But
think a lot of
and
people,
yeah,
yeah, were thrown off. hmm
but were there any other scenes that like stood out for you or caught your attention, or do you want to move on?
Well, okay. Well, so I would talk a little bit about the ending, if that's fine, or we're working to that
Oh, go ahead, go
because
ahead.
yeah, because I really feel like I really hated everything to do with the painting stuff. It's just not for me, you know. It's maybe that's just personal taste, but
The
the
drawings,
yeah, the drawing stuff. Oh,
that I I remember asking you when we were doing the streaming. And I
mhm.
was like, "Does this come into play in the video, like in the games?" Because it
Yeah,
felt off. It just felt like this did
yeah.
not make any sense to me.
Yeah, I can see maybe what they were going for but I think the only reason they even it feels to me like the only reason they even had it as a part of everything going on was well there might be two reasons. One reason would be to give us a lot more to do in the side plot where we talk about Abby and her personality and her quirkiness, I guess. And that reason's kind of frustrating because a lot of the side plot stuff we could have done without, frankly. And then the other reason maybe would be to keep it kind of more PG, I guess, because with the paintings doing that rather than having to have everything be settled with blood, it's maybe better. But we still end up not only killing Vanessa with a knife, but then also I'm pretty sure William is supposed to be at the end there, like ripped apart by his own animatronics. So, or no, he's killed by the spring traps or spring locks in his suit. Like, I feel like we just didn't need that drawing stuff, and it felt really corny. It's sort of a kids show, whatever movie, but like the games are also semi for kids, and they don't do that to you in the games. The games can talk about awful death and whatever, and it's like it's in the setting of animatronics and it's this freaky world. That's fine. Why not have a similar thing in the movie where because it feels like almost like disrespectful to the audience of like, okay, it's PG-13, that's good enough to where we're showing people getting killed. What is this painting? What is this drawing thing? It's just really out of place in my opinion. I liked Afton. William Afton being the first guy, the counselor. It was a cool callback, frankly, the first time that I watched it. Maybe I'm just like oblivious, I just don't pay attention. But the first time that I watched it, when he pulls off the mask, I didn't even realize who it was. I was like, oh, William Afton. He has a face, he can talk. That kind of sucks. But then on rewatch, I'm like, okay, he's this earlier character, that's fine. But I feel like in almost any franchise, when you have a kind of spooky villain with a disturbing mask, disturbing type of face, less is almost always more. When you take off the mask and have him have a whole like monologue about how whatever, it feels really cartoony. It's not as scary, it's not as intimidating. Him with the mask on is scary enough. Just let him not talk at all and don't make him another character. Just make him almost silent. Because in the games, that's how it was. He was this like disturbing, broken apart machine thing that only said like a few sets of dialogue, and that was it. And that just works way better in my opinion.
Yeah, that the ending confused me with the drawings
Mm-hmm.
and
Uh-huh.
like the animatronics turning on him. Like
Mm-hmm.
I expected that to happen. Like once it's revealed who he is, I was like, okay, yes, the animatronics are going to turn on him at some point. But I also felt like it would have been the ending would have been so much more perfect if we found out that one of the animatronics was Mike and Abby's brother. It would have
Mm-hmm.
just been a full circle moment, and now they're like, "Oh, he got them." It would have been even better if he was Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just, I feel like it was such a like you threw all of this like family plot in there, and they needed to connect it strongly. Like if you're gonna have this family plot in there, and if there's potentially like this is gonna be the recurring cast that comes back in any future movies, then like you connect it all the way. You give them that connection. Like, oh, Freddy is our brother's spirit, and now we reminded him who he is, and now he's killing William to protect us. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just keep getting drawn to like the
Mhm.
brother should have been one of the animatronics. He should have been
I
Freddy.
agree. And I think that also would have been easier to pull off while making it feel earned. It would have been so much easier because I feel like if you make Garrett like the younger brother, just make him just anybody who was just killed, you have to do so much more work to make that feel earned and powerful or like impactful. Because like the whole point of searching for the brother is to get maybe some type of revenge and to get some type of like understanding of what happened. And so if you make the brother be an animatronic, then you get that pretty easy. You make him kill William. He's like the defender. Maybe you have the place burned down at the end, and so the brother ends up dying, but at least you get the revenge and you get the closure of knowing exactly what happened to that kid. But instead,
and then you have the three siblings there together, and it's like, okay, the family protected each other, but it also would bring sense to that scene you mentioned earlier of when Mike mentions his name to William, and William had like a little face.
Yeah,
like it would have drawn it all together if it was like, oh, he made that face because his brother's inside of Freddy.
Yeah, I feel like if you want to make it impactful in the same way without having the younger brother be a part of it anymore, you kind of have to explore William a little bit more and have it be like have there be some scene or something where Mike is asking him about his younger brother and he says, I don't even remember. Like something to say like this guy killed so many kids, whatever. This guy did so much awful stuff that he doesn't even care or remember, that it doesn't faze him anymore, this idea. Like there has to be, but if you're not going to do either, you're going to make him still menacing and he's going to remember fully that he killed him, but he's not going to brag or act at all like awful about it. Like it just feels like, yeah, this guy's you're not making out to be the monster that he is if this is just one of many. And that wasn't really explored at all. That feels like a waste. Because like this character, that's interesting. A character that's like a serial killer that goes after kids, whatever. Terrible character, whatever. Horrifying. But that type of character, now you have this vendetta with the brother that you have to use that somehow, and it just feels like sort of unused. We just kind of kill him because we have to.
Unfortunately, people who listen to this podcast know that I hate prequels, and I hate prequels, and I don't hate prequels. I just hate prequels that go and explain too much about mysterious characters. And I hate when someone remakes a movie like the 2007 Halloween remake. I hate the fact that they went and showed us too much of little Michael Myers and gave him this like trailer park trash type of family background to explain his evilness. Like I hate when movies and sequels and remakes do that. But I feel like this movie makes me want a prequel to understand, like, was William a serial killer who launched Freddy Fazbear to make his killing easier? Or was he already the Freddy Fazbear owner who just snapped and decided he wanted to start killing kids, and he franchised around the country to make that more convenient for him? Like he used Freddy Fazbear as a cover-up. And it's just like, I need to understand how the person who kidnapped Mike's brother out the woods is the same person who launched Freddy Fazbear and is killing kids. Like, I need to know more about that character.
That could be really
like,
good.
There's so much fun.
I feel like they could do a lot with that. Like they could definitely. There's that scene we have semi early in the movie where Mike turns on the TV or puts in the tape and it shows the advertisement for Five Nights at Freddy's. You have that character. You could have that character and the William Afton character, a younger William Afton, going through setting up FNAF and whatever turmoil he has, whatever pushes him to do what he does. And so, like, have an exploration of that, and then even, like, within that, have a scene or have a part where that's being shot, and, like, that's within the shot, something like that. It feels like there's a lot of really cool things you could do with an earlier...
Or it could be, like, we find out that William isn't actually the original, like, owner of Freddy Fazbear. It's like, he worked there. He probably stumbled upon, we always hear stories about some serial killers who end up having a victim that they groom to now help them do the job. And, that could also have been William's story. And it just they even could have had it where, Mike's brother is probably still alive somewhere, and like Mike's brother could have been the bad guy at the end instead of having it
Hmm.
be actual William to be like, okay, he
Yeah.
kidnapped his brother and he groomed his brother, and
Hmm.
now we're here, and you find out that it's like I don't know. I just feel like there's so much potential for this movie, and
Yeah. It does
they didn't
miss in a
follow
lot of
through.
areas. I think it's just the animatronics. Like that stuff is good, but the story kind of falls flat a good amount. It's okay. Yeah, a lot of that's just okay. They could definitely do more with it, and hopefully they do, I suppose. Because I like the animatronics enough that I'd love to see another attempt or an expansion of it for sure. Yeah.
Any thoughts on any more thoughts on Mike and Abby and the whole crew of humans that we got?
Hmm. Um. Outside of that, no. I mean, I feel like I talked about the babysitter a decent amount. I feel like I've got a good handle. Well, Matt Pat, maybe that's the only other one worth mentioning. Matt Pat, who did all the game theories, which were a pretty big part, maybe not of popularizing. I think Five Nights at Freddy's would have done well on its own anyway, but of unifying all the lore people. Whether you kind of hated Matt Pat because he had some pretty loosely put together theories on it, and sometimes they were pretty far off, and there was always so much more to find. So, like, a lot of them have been disproven at this point. But I think he's pretty central to the game side of it and the internet obsession with it that came about. And so, having him actually show up in the movie and deliver some lines was pretty cool to see. It was pretty short lived, but yeah, that was cool within the diner and everything.
What about the animatronics themselves?
Oh yeah. Well, with the animatronics, I feel like the animatronics didn't have a ton. You know what? Actually, the negative thing for the animatronics, I didn't really love. I guess like having them put up the chairs and tables and everything felt kind of out of place. Yeah, a lot of that stuff was a bit strange. I did like. I think there was a part where the animatronic bear it goes back and I think gets the girl or something. There's a part within they go into a taxi and the bear is like massive within the taxi. It felt a little bit unreal. Some of that stuff was weird, but it was also kind of cool to see them in that setting. I wouldn't have ever expected them to do that, and I don't really think it was a good idea to have Freddy Fazbear as a massive suit creature go across the entire town and then come back across the entire town, whatever, to the facility. But it was kind of cool to see. Outside of that, I don't really feel like the animatronics had a ton of individual personality. Some of the kills with them were cool, I suppose. Like having the like Chica's cupcake play such a role where it's not just a cupcake on a platter, it's like actively attacking characters is pretty neat. But it did also kind of feel like a dog or an animal, and I don't really know why the
It did.
cupcake would be any less
I
sentient,
did, but I have to say, like Cupcake's kill scenes were like
Yeah.
they're pretty cool. They were there. I was laughing at them, but with like enjoyment because I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I would say. Yeah, for the animatronics, not a lot of character development or like individual personality going on. But I thought the kills were pretty cool, and there were some pretty funny scenes with those.
Before we wrap up, I have like a something that I never really do, but
Hmm.
being that you've played most of the games, if
Mhm.
there are any sequels, like what from the games would you want to be
Hmm.
like part of like a potential sequel?
Well, I think one thing in terms of animatronics that look especially unique, this is largely based off the movie is largely based off the first game for animatronic designs, and so I think probably Sister Location is the one to go for a sequel. Like I feel like the first game, these types of animatronics, this type of look for the movie, fair enough. That's like the iconic look. The second game is just the same with toy animatronics. I don't think that they were unique enough to really stand out. They're basically all the same type. You could go, game by game and keep it that way, except for the third game where there's only one animatronic that doesn't really work. But the first game, the second game, maybe the fourth game. But I feel like all of these are just they're not quite unique enough. When you get to Sister Location, you've got Baby as like the way that the Baby and Ballora and all the different animatronics in Sister Location look, I think stands out way better. That could be a cool thing to do. For lore and everything like that. now that you already have Vanessa in the game, Vanessa's dead now, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I don't think she makes it out alive. She gets stabbed at least. But maybe she lives. I forget exactly. But, well, or maybe they don't even really show. I don't know if they really indicate for sure whether or not she lives. But to go from there, yeah, you could keep Mike in. Now he knows his brother's death. You'd have to have almost another story. I think from here, if you want to keep it going, you need to shift over to a whole different set of people. You could go back in the past if you want, explore William Afton, whatever. You could go into the future and explore some of the baby or whatever animatronics there and have a whole another villain. That'd probably be okay. There's also Security Breach, which is maybe worth considering, like a really big facility. That game did pretty well, pretty popular. So I guess I'd say I lean towards Sister Location. I think that game has the best animatronic look to it, but you could try to throw in stuff from some of the other games as well.
Well, Vanessa didn't die. She was in a coma at the end. So they could bring her back, but I agree with you. Like there's nothing more you can tell with these set of characters. Like you would either have to go on the past or have a completely different story. Like it doesn't.
Maybe. Well, okay. The only other one left may be Abby, right? Because her character isn't looking for her brother. She doesn't care about that. She's looking for friends, and she kind of finds friends, but I'm pretty sure her friends are like undead kid ghosts or whatever. I guess at the end she was starting to associate with people better. So maybe Abby is like a 20-something who no longer thinks about it, comes back to the story. There were a bunch of books. I'm not going to get into that. There's so many. There's like I think 29 books. I haven't read them, but I have
29 books. I didn't even know I didn't know there were books
at all. Amount of books. It's wild. So there's a bunch of books, and the books all tell different small stories. One of the central characters, an important character from the books, I believe is called Charlie. And Charlie, well, without getting overly into it, Charlie has a lot like in common or in relation to the baby character. Charlie, for whatever reason, keeps ending out close to the animatronics. You could probably have a character based off Charlie, have it be Abby, and Abby keeps kind of running into these scenarios related, or she keeps being drawn to like an old location, an old Five Nights at Freddy's location or something like that. It would be kind of similar to the way the book played out in that way, because it feels like, and maybe they were even trying to set up that direction if the movie does well enough or something. And I think the movie did really well. I think Abby's character is interesting enough that you could have her kind of forget all about it. She's young enough for that. Have her go into her 20s, and she's like, yeah, I remember as a kid there was some weird stuff with animatronics, whatever, and then have to kind of remember or re-explore some of that as an adult. Maybe with also, you could have other kids involved, whatever, to keep it interesting, or to have other characters, or something along those lines. But I think her character you maybe could pull in.
I mean, the movie was set in like 2000 and the early 2000s, so you could even a sequel could be like we flash forward to like the beginning of like the big YouTube craze, and then you have kids who want to explore the abandoned Freddy Fazbear, and that could be the movie.
Yeah. Well, there's also without going too far into it, but there's also Security Breach, which is the newest game, I believe is set in like 2035, something like that. And so you could flash even forward if you wanted. And in that game, you've got this massive facility that's based off of this old Five Nights at Freddy's stuff. I don't know how it would play in with the movie, because it feels like Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of dead in the movie, but maybe we don't know everything. Because like, let's say let's say Abby goes to this facility that's like a much bigger facility with like more kids and more things going on. I feel there's some ways you could explore there. The YouTube craze would be interesting too, though. And I could see,
I mean, they could also go overseas. Like, what if William franchised out across the pond? Like, you never know. Like, right. I don't know. I feel like their story, Mike and Abby's story, is, I don't know where else you could take it, but I don't know.
Yeah, especially Mike. I don't see Mike, but yeah.
No, I can't. No, that character has to be done, and keep Vanessa in the coma. She's not necessary.
Sure.
But before we wrap up, I can give you guys some behind-the-scenes info and a little facts. So, to start with, you mentioned that you thought the movie did pretty well, and it did. They had a budget of $20 million, and they ended up making $295.8 million in the box office. So, They did pretty awesome. In January of 2024, it was announced that the Five Nights at Freddy's sequel is already in development. So
Oh,
that
that's
helps.
exciting.
It's I
We'll see what
still don't know where that's going to be. Um, there have been reports that they plan on incorporating other game lore from other games, and other animatronics from different games in future sequels. There's also talk of having movie original sequels. I mean, movie original animatronics in the
Oh,
sequels.
okay.
So that could be fun.
Yeah, I'd
That
like to
could
see
be a
what they try with
little
that.
different.
Hmm.
The writer and creator of Freddy Fazbear said that there were a lot of video game moments that he didn't feel fit in this first movie, but he wants to explore them in potential sequels. So we have that to look forward to. But then let's move on to some of critics' reactions. Five Nights at Freddy's currently has a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh, that's not too bad.
That's
That's
great.
also
Well,
not something too good.
yeah.
Variety felt Variety felt that the animatronic characters were underutilized, with the film instead of focusing on a baffling plot and backstory for their protagonist, which I agree with. I wanted to watch a Five Nights at Freddy movie, not like in kind of
Mm.
hunting somebody down in the woods. And
Okay.
lastly, The Guardian gave the movie a 2 out of 5 rating, arguing that the low stakes late night thrill we expected from the source material never arrived, held back by a mixture of indecisive restraint and misplaced self importance.
Hmm.
But what about us? Do we cash or pass Five Nights at Freddy's? Deadeye?
I would say cash. Yeah, I mean, I think people should take a look, especially if they liked the games. It was definitely a fan servicey. You had some from what you might enjoy from the games. So why not?
For me, since I'm not a huge fan of the movie, I mean, of the games, and I really had no
Mm.
connection, judging this based off the movie and the plot, it's a pass for me.
Yeah,
Because
I can look at that.
just me watching the movie, it felt disconnected from the stuff with Mike and the dreams and the custody dispute, and then all the stuff
Mm.
at Fazbear. It never felt connected, and the ending with the drawings, it all just felt all sort of like it didn't thread together. It didn't
Yeah.
thread together like I would have wanted to. So for me, it's a pass. But I this was their first go out. Their
Mhm.
first. This was their first time. So maybe the sequel will be better, and I'm looking forward to that. So,
Yeah, I think
but
I kind of expect the sequel. If the sequel's not better, yeah, I feel like it has to be. If it's not better, that's a pretty
it
big
has to
letdown.
be.
Yeah.
Now the writers and the producers then will know what they can make a successful movie based off the IP. So
Mhm.
now, like you take that success and you give the fans something better.
Right.
Like you already did the groundwork. Now just
Mhm.
kill it. But
Yeah.
with that we have come to the end of this review. Thank you so much again, Deadeye, for coming back and reviewing another horror movie based off a video game. And there are a lot of those. So you hopefully you can come back and join me again. I don't know what movie or video game that would be, but again, there's a lot out there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm sure we could find something else sometime soon. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this.
I wouldn't even. There's like I'm a sucker for. I'm a big fan of video games based off movies and TV shows. So just like flipping it around is new for me. So But hope you guys enjoyed this review. Good night.
If you like this episode, please check out the Haddonfield Horror podcast from big series like Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Saw, or our one-off reviews like The Blackening and Hereditary. You can follow Haddonfield Horrors on Instagram and TikTok, where the hosts post updates and mini-reviews. Full episodes are available on several podcasting platforms and YouTube. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. The Haddonfield Horror Podcast is produced by Mark Smart,
Maria Perez,
Swan Griffin, and Elian Cordova. Themed by Lethal Injection and edited by Mark Smart.
The Haddonfield Horrors Podcast is a Letters to Media production.
Should we do an intro?